That is the face of Scientology and the RPF that Scientology hides from the public and even its own celebrities who speak for it. A former Scientologist, Andrei Tabayoyan, has written in court documents about this base at Hemet being armed and dangerous. And others have described how they have been subjected to incarceration and human rights deprivations at that place. For example, Vicky Asnerin, the former head of the Religious Technologies Center, was deposed by David Miscavige and sent to the RPF at Hemet for 3 months. For 3 months, she spent 12 hours a day running around a pole, 1 hour one way, 1 hour the other, and was guarded at night so she couldn't escape. Escape she eventually did. This is what I mean when I say Scientology is engaged in the denial of human rights, the denial of human rights of its own people. So it is a cruel irony for it to accuse Germany of being engaged in the denial of Scientologists' human rights. But Scientology is also engaged in the denial of human life. An ex-Scientologist, Mary Tabayoyan, has testified how she and other female Scientologists have been ordered to have abortions. And I have argued before courts that that constitutes instructions to commit murder. At the very least, it denies a woman freedom of choice with regard to abortions. And why do they do this? It is because children require family time, and family time interferes with production, the production of things that produce money. And Mr. Hubbard writes in his book, The Second Dynamic, about children being expensive and inconvenient. Because Mr. Hubbard requires his most loyal adherents, his Sea Organization members, to sign contracts to serve Scientology for 1 billion years. Children are also taught to disconnect from their non-Scientology parents and to disconnect from people who do not agree with Scientology's objectives. This is an issue which is becoming more frequent in divorces involving Scientologists and ex-Scientologists. The idea that a Scientologist should not have custody of a child because the Scientologist will teach the child, and the religion will teach the child, to disconnect from the non-Scientology parent. Let me turn it to the punishment of people outside of Scientology. Scientologists do this with fair game. The fair game doctrine provides that any Scientologist may use any means to destroy a non-Scientologist. It is applied to opponents of Scientology who are referred to as suppressive persons or SPs. Scientology claims it has cancelled fair game because it was bad for public relations. But that is an example of what Scientology calls an acceptable truth, which is a statement tailored to meet the needs of a particular audience. It is a half-truth because it was not cancelled with regard to the handling of suppressives, which was what it was always intended for anyway. Fair game takes 4 principal forms: intelligence, investigation, intimidation, and litigation. And all these things are written about by Mr. Hubbard and form part of Scientology's so-called sacred religious scriptures. They are all carried out by the Office of Special Affairs, which is responsible for eliminating external threats to Scientology. First, intelligence. It involves the collection of information. Information about known critics of the Church. A former head of the FBI in Los Angeles, Mr. Ted Gunderson, has described Scientology as having an intelligence gathering operation rivaling that of many small nations. You might well ask why an organization which calls itself a nice peaceful church requires a massive intelligence operation. It is because of the second aspect of fair game, which is investigation. After the FBI raids and the seizure of so much damaging documentation by the FBI, Scientology reorganized its intelligence gathering operation. Although it occasionally slips up, generally it now uses private investigators hired by church-employed lawyers. The theory being that the church can hide behind what we call in America the attorney-client privilege, and the lawyers can hide behind the attorney-work product privilege to avoid giving information about those activities. But we have documents evidencing church lawyers hiring private investigators, in my case, investigators to investigate me. There are several interesting aspects to these investigations. Scientology employs what it calls black propaganda to disseminate lies and defamation about its critics. Mr. Hubbard writes, the more lurid the lies, the more sexual the lies, the better. And these lies are put into documents which Scientology calls dead agent packs.
Up to you.
I have the unique advantage of having 2 dead agent packs written about me. And these dead agent packs are distributed to the friends, neighbors, families, and business associates of Scientology's critics, and the families and business associates of former Scientologists who dare speak out about their experiences in the cult. That is one reason why so few former Scientologists are willing to speak out and be counted.
Right.
Because after many years of working for $50 a month, sleeping in birthing or group housing and receiving inadequate diets, they have finally escaped to a life of freedom. And having got out of the organization and built a home and job, they know how easily the organization can use noisy investigations and dead agent packs and black propaganda to destroy their new life. Mr. Hubbard writes about noisy investigations and how they should be conducted. The louder, the better, he says. Noisy investigations blend into intimidation, the third aspect of fair game. Recently, we have seen intimidation taking the form of Scientologists distributing leaflets summarizing dead agent packs around the neighborhoods of critics. It also involves the use of private investigators, such as the chief investigator, Eugene Ingram, to interview neighbors, friends, and business associates. And these interviews don't solicit information. They involve asking pertinent questions that, in effect, defame a person with lies and scandalous allegations. It is the mere asking of a question that can cause the damage, such as asking what what the person knows about Miss Cuberta being involved in the assassination of John Kennedy. The person will say nothing, but is left to wonder if she was involved. It reflects what Mr. Hubbard said, if you criticize us, we will more than even the score. And evening the score involves the loss of jobs, relationships, and friends. So the truth is suppressed. The fourth element of fair game is litigation, which is where I have been most involved. In his Manual of Justice, Mr. Hubbard writes that the purpose of the lawsuit is not to win, but to harass.